Get out! She's mine!" The words were quiet, almost polite, but they landed like a switch being flipped. Every conversation in the restaurant seemed to pause at once, as if the room had agreed to hold its breath. Claire Whitmore's fingers tightened around her water glass. Cold condensation slicked her skin. For a split second, she honestly wondered if she'd imagined it, if her brain had made up something dramatic just to survive the most boring date of her adult life. Across from her, Trevor, who had insisted on ordering for the table without asking, stared at the man who had just pulled up a chair beside Claire's. The chair hadn't been dragged. It had been moved with a single effortless pull, as if the laws of physics worked differently for whoever owned that hand. The man sat down without asking permission. He was huge, not just tall, built like someone who had always been dangerous without needing to prove it. Broad shoulders and a dark coat, thick forearms resting casually on the edge of the table. Posture relaxed in a way that made everyone else look stiff. He didn't glance around. He didn't scan the restaurant. He didn't look impressed by the expensive lighting, the wine list, the servers in crisp black uniforms, or the quiet wealth humming in the air. His eyes were on Claire. Then slowly, his gaze moved to Trevor. "Get out," he repeated, still calm. "She's mine." Trevor blinked like a man whose brain was buffering. Then he let out a laugh. It was thin and uncertain, meant to re-establish control. "Okay, cool, funny, but, who are you?" The man didn't answer. He just looked at Trevor again, and that was the moment the room truly changed. It wasn't intimidation through anger. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't making a scene. He was simply there, solid, unmoving, certain. Trevor's smile collapsed. He swallowed and glanced around like someone searching for backup. The closest server froze mid-step. A couple at the next table abruptly found their plates fascinating. Even the bartender stopped polishing a glass. Trevor's confidence melted into embarrassment. "Listen, man, I'm not looking for trouble. This is a misunderstanding." Claire's throat went dry. She turned toward the man beside her and finally saw his face clearly. Sharp features, dark hair, neatly cut. A short beard that made him look even more controlled, even more unreadable. His eyes were brown, steady, direct, and too familiar. Claire's heart did something painful and ridiculous. No, not him, not here, not now. Trevor stood up too fast, chair scraping loudly. "Whatever, this is insane." He grabbed his jacket, muttered something about crazy people, and walked away with the stiff pride of a man who knew arguing would only make him look smaller. He didn't even say goodbye to Claire, which honestly made her want to laugh. If her pulse wasn't racing so hard, she could feel it in her throat. The moment Trevor vanished through the restaurant doors, the noise slowly returned. Forks clinked again. Conversations resumed in low voices. But the energy stayed altered, like the entire room had witnessed something intimate it wasn't supposed to. Claire kept her eyes on the man beside her. "You don't get to do that," she said. Her voice was steady. Her hands were not. He didn't flinch. "You don't get to decide who sits with me," she continued, leaning slightly forward, keeping her tone low so she didn't become a spectacle. "You don't get to claim me like I'm an object." The man's gaze softened. Just a fraction. Not enough to be kind, enough to be human. "I know," he said. That answer startled her more than the interruption itself. Claire blinked. "You know?" He nodded once. A small motion, controlled. "I shouldn't have said it like that," he admitted. "But I meant what I meant." Claire's laugh came out sharp, not amused. "That doesn't make it better." "I'm not trying to make it better," he said. "I'm trying to stop something worse." Her stomach tightened. "What are you talking about?" Before he could answer, a server appeared, nervous, eyes flicking between them like she was deciding whether to call a manager or a bodyguard. "Is everything all right?" the server asked carefully. "Yes," the man replied smoothly. The server's gaze landed on Claire, silently asking if that was true. Claire forced a polite smile because she had spent years perfecting polite smiles. It was muscle memory, survival. "Everything's fine." The server exhaled and nodded. "Would Would you like anything else? The man didn't look at the menu. Bring the check, he said. For everything. Claire's jaw tightened. I can pay for my own dinner. I know, he replied immediately, like he'd expected her to say that. It's not about the money. There it was again, like he knew her, like he'd always known her. Claire pushed her chair back. The movement felt loud. She stood, pulling her coat from the backrest, her pulse pounding in her ears. I'm leaving, she said. He didn't reach for her, didn't block her path, didn't touch her. He simply watched her with a patience that somehow felt more dangerous than force. I expected you would, he said. Claire froze for half a second. That voice. She had heard it in a quiet hallway at 6 a.m. She had heard it on the phone while he gave calm instructions that made grown men move faster. She had heard it in a house that was always busy, always full of people, always loud, except for the moments when he walked in and everything changed. She hated herself for recognizing him instantly. Luca DeSantis, the man she had tried to erase from her life. The man she had left behind without ever telling him the truth. Claire stepped away from the table without another word and headed out of the restaurant. The cold air hit her the moment she stepped outside. It should have felt cleansing. It didn't. It felt like her body had forgotten how to breathe. She walked quickly, heels tapping on the sidewalk, trying to outrun the way her chest ached. Behind her, a door opened. Claire. She stopped. Not because she wanted to, because her name from his mouth did something to her that she still didn't understand. She turned slowly. Luca stood under the restaurant's warm lights spilling onto the sidewalk. He looked too large for the space, too solid for a city that kept moving. He kept a respectful distance, several feet between them, hands in his coat pockets, shoulders relaxed, face unreadable. He didn't look angry. He didn't look smug. He looked focused. I didn't plan to do that, he said. Claire let out a bitter laugh. You never plan. You just take control. Luca's jaw tightened slightly at that. I didn't come to control you. Then why did you come? She snapped. His gaze moved over her face like he was checking she was okay, not admiring her, not hunting her, just assessing. That alone made her throat tighten because it was familiar. You shouldn't have been there tonight, he said quietly. Claire's eyes flashed. I can go wherever I want. I know, he repeated. That's why this isn't an order. Then what is it? She demanded. A beat. Then Luca said, It's me admitting I was wrong. Claire stared at him, the words not fitting the man she remembered. For years, Luca had been the calm center of every storm, the one person who never reacted, never flinched, never showed weakness. And now he was standing on a sidewalk, looking at her like she was the only thing in the world he could not control. Claire crossed her arms, more to steady herself than to look strong. You don't get to rewrite the past because you suddenly feel like it. I'm not trying to rewrite it, he said. I'm trying to understand what I ignored. Her chest tightened. She looked away for a second, focusing on a passing car, on the streetlight, on anything that wasn't his face. You let me leave, she said softly. Luca didn't speak immediately. When he did, his voice dropped lower. I didn't think you would. Claire laughed again, but this time it was quieter, edged with hurt. That's the problem. You never thought about me at all. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, in pain. I did, he said. Claire shook her head. You noticed what you wanted when it was convenient. The rest of the time, I was invisible. Luca stepped forward, one small step, and stopped, as if he'd promised himself he wouldn't cross a line. Look at me, he said. Claire's stomach flipped. She hated that her body reacted before her mind could argue. She lifted her eyes to his. His gaze held hers, steady and unwavering. I saw you, Luca said. I just didn't realize what it meant until you were gone. Claire swallowed hard. Her voice came out brittle. Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to love someone who never chooses anyone? His expression shifted, barely, like a crack in stone. I didn't choose anyone. he said quietly. That's true. Claire's laugh was sharp. Exactly. Luca exhaled slowly. And I told myself that made it harmless. Claire's throat tightened. She looked down at her hands. Her fingers trembled slightly. She clenched them into fists, furious at her own reaction. You were always surrounded, she said, each word precise. Women, parties, smiles, perfume, voices. I cleaned lipstick off glassware more times than I can count. I washed sheets that weren't mine to touch. I heard laughter in rooms I wasn't allowed to enter. Luca's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened. Claire lifted her chin. And you never once asked how that felt. Silence stretched. Then Luca said, Tell me. Claire blinked, caught off guard. What? Tell me, he repeated, how it felt. Her chest tightened so hard she almost couldn't breathe. How it felt, she echoed, stunned by the question. It felt like swallowing something sharp and pretending it was fine. Luca's gaze stayed on her. He didn't look away. He didn't interrupt. He didn't defend himself. Claire's voice lowered. It felt lonely. A passing couple walked by, glancing at Luca like they recognized danger, then quickly looking away. Claire barely noticed. Her whole body was fixed on the man in front of her. Luca's voice was quiet. Why didn't you say anything? Claire's laugh came out small, almost incredulous. Because you didn't want anything serious with anyone. You made that very clear without ever saying it out loud. Luca's eyes held hers. And you still stayed. Claire's mouth tightened. I stayed because I thought maybe if I was good enough, useful enough, quiet enough, you'd finally see me. Her cheeks burned with the confession, not because it was dramatic, because it was true. Luca's face changed, just slightly, like something inside him shifted. I was a fool, he said. Claire stared at him, her heart hammering. Don't say that. It's true, he replied. I was. Claire looked away again, blinking hard. I quit because I couldn't keep doing that to myself. His voice softened. I know. Her head snapped back. You know? Luca nodded once. You left a note. Claire's breath caught. She remembered that note. She'd written it with shaking hands. 3 sentences. Professional, clean, no emotion, no confession. A lie disguised as dignity. You read it, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Yes, he replied. And you still let me go. Luca's jaw tightened. For the first time, the control in his face looked like effort. I thought letting you go was respect. Claire's eyes stung. It wasn't respect. It was indifference. Luca flinched, not physically, but something in his gaze changed. A car slowed at the curb, black and silent, like it had been waiting. The driver didn't get out, didn't speak, just watched. Claire noticed and felt her stomach twist. Of course, she muttered. You didn't come alone. Luca followed her gaze. No, because you're Luca DeSantis, she said. You can't even walk out of a restaurant like a normal person. A flicker of humor touched his eyes, quick, almost reluctant. Normal is overrated. Claire let out a short laugh despite herself, then immediately hated that she had. Luca watched her, like that tiny sound mattered more than anything else. I'm not here to drag you back, he said. I'm not here to force anything. Claire's voice turned sharp again, defensive. Then what do you want? Luca's gaze stayed locked on her. A chance to speak to you without walls between us. Claire stared. You never wanted that before. I didn't understand what I was losing, he said. And now I do. Her chest tightened. She should leave. She should walk away. She had practiced walking away for months, but her body was still reacting to him like she hadn't spent 3 months trying to unlearn his existence. Claire shook her head slowly. I'm not going back to that life. I'm not asking you to, Luca said immediately. I'm asking you to let me take you to your car safely. Claire narrowed her eyes. I can walk. Luca didn't argue. He simply said, then I'll walk behind you, far enough that you won't feel trapped, close enough that you won't be alone. Claire held his gaze, trying to find manipulation. She didn't see it. That scared her more than anything. She turned and started walking. Footsteps followed, steady, unhurried, a few paces behind, exactly as he promised. They moved through the city like that, the space between them filled with everything they hadn't said. At her car, Claire reached for the handle and paused. She didn't turn. "You didn't answer my question," she said quietly. Luca's voice came from behind her, low and calm. "Which one?" "Why now?" Claire asked. "Why tonight?" Silence. Then Luca answered, and his words were simple. No speeches, no excuses. "Because I saw you smiling at him," he said. "And for the first time it felt real that I might never hear your voice in my house again." Claire's hand tightened on the handle. Her voice came out rougher than she wanted. "You don't get to be jealous." "I know," Luca said again. Claire turned slowly, finally facing him fully. His expression was controlled, but his eyes weren't cold. They were intent, heavy with something that looked a lot like regret. "I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight," Luca said. "I'm asking you not to disappear before I can make things right." Claire's heart pounded. She wanted to say no. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to ask why his voice still made her feel like she was standing too close to a fire. Instead, she said the only honest thing she could manage. "I don't trust you." Luca nodded once. "You shouldn't. Not yet." Claire blinked, thrown again by how little he tried to push. Luca took a breath. "But you can trust this. I won't embarrass you again. Not like that." Claire's lips parted. "You call that embarrassing?" A flicker of dry humor touched his mouth. Almost a smile, almost nothing. "The restaurant seems to think so." Claire should have hated that. Instead, she felt the smallest crack in her anger. She opened her car door. Before getting in, she looked at him one last time. "If you followed me tonight..." Luca's gaze sharpened. "Yes, you've been watching me," Claire said. Luca didn't deny it. That should have scared her. But the way he said it, without pride, without threat, made it feel like a confession, not a claim. "I needed to know you were okay," he said. Claire's voice dropped. "And if I'm not?" Luca stepped closer, just one step, and stopped again, careful with the line he wouldn't cross. "Then I fix what I broke," he said quietly. Claire's throat tightened. She got into her car and closed the door, locking it out of reflex. Through the window, she watched him stand there, unmoving, like he had nowhere else to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from a friend. "How's the date?" Claire stared at the message, then looked back at Luca. This wasn't a date anymore. This was the past catching up. And as Claire started the engine, she realized something that made her grip the steering wheel harder. She wasn't just afraid of him hurting her again. She was afraid of believing him. Because if Luca DeSantis truly wanted her now, then why had he let her walk away in the first place? And what exactly had he read in that resignation note that still haunted him? Claire drove home in silence. The city lights blurred past her windshield, red and white streaks melting together as her mind replayed the night on a loop. Luca's voice, his eyes, the way he had stood behind her, close enough to protect her, far enough to let her breathe. She hated how easily the past slipped back into her body. She pulled into her apartment parking lot, cut the engine and sat there longer than necessary, hands still gripping the steering wheel. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from her friend. She ignored it. Instead, Claire closed her eyes, and just like that, she was back there. Not in the restaurant. In his house, 3 months earlier. The DeSantis residence never slept. Even at 6 a.m, there was movement. Security shifts changing, staff whispering through hallways. The low hum of a place that existed on a different rhythm from the rest of the world. Claire moved quietly, as she always did. She wore soft flats, her hair pulled back neatly, sleeves rolled just enough to work comfortably. She knew the house better than most people who lived there. She knew which floors creaked, which doors needed a gentle push, which rooms were off limits, not because of rules, but because Luca preferred silence there. She had learned him without meaning to. Luca liked his coffee black, strong, served in the same mug every morning, chipped slightly on the handle. He pretended not to notice details like that. Claire noticed everything. She passed through the living room, straightening a cushion that hadn't moved, aligning a magazine he would never read. It wasn't about perfection. It was about order, about keeping the world calm around him. Because Luca DeSantis carried enough weight already. She reached his office door and paused. It was half open. Light spilled into the hallway. His voice drifted out, low and controlled, speaking into the phone. "No," he said calmly. "That won't work." Claire waited, eyes on the floor, heart doing that familiar thing it always did when she heard him before seeing him. "Yes," Luca continued, "move the meeting, and don't argue with me again." A pause, then quieter. "I don't repeat myself." The call ended. Claire took a breath and knocked lightly. "Come in," Luca said. She stepped inside. His office was immaculate. Dark wood, clean lines, the scent of coffee and leather. Luca stood near the desk, jacket already on, sleeves rolled just enough to show his forearms. He looked powerful without trying. He turned toward her. "Morning," he said. "Good morning," Claire replied, moving toward the coffee machine. "Your coffee's ready." "Thank you." That was it. 2 words. Calm, neutral. And yet, something in her chest tightened every single time. She poured the coffee, handed him the mug. Their fingers brushed for half a second. Claire felt it like a spark. Luca didn't react at all. Or maybe he did, and hid it better than she ever could. He took a sip, nodded once. Perfect. Those words should have been meaningless. They weren't. Claire busied herself, wiping a surface that didn't need wiping. She stayed because she always stayed a moment longer than necessary. Because leaving meant returning to the reality where she felt invisible again. "You have guests coming later," she said. "This afternoon." "I know," Luca replied. She hesitated. "Several." "I know." Her mouth tightened. She didn't ask who they were. She already knew. Women. There were always women. They came dressed too well, laughing too loudly, leaving behind traces of perfume that lingered long after they were gone. Claire cleaned up after all of them. She learned to recognize different shades of lipstick, different tones of laughter, different ways of pretending something mattered. Luca never brought the same woman twice, and that should have told her everything. "You'll be out late," she said softly. "Yes." No explanation, no apology. Claire nodded. "I'll make sure everything's ready." Luca studied her for a second longer than usual. His gaze lingered, thoughtful, like he was about to say something. Then his phone buzzed. The moment passed. He turned away. Claire watched him leave the office with the same quiet grace he brought into every room. And something inside her cracked just a little more. The day passed like all the others. Claire worked efficiently. She smiled when spoken to. She avoided looking at the front door when the first guest arrived. By evening, the house had transformed. Music played softly, glasses clinked. Laughter echoed down the halls. Claire moved around the edges, invisible again, collecting empty glasses, wiping counters, restoring order behind chaos. She heard Luca's voice occasionally, calm, controlled, amused. Never hers. At one point, she walked past the living room and froze. Luca stood there, surrounded by people, a woman pressed close to his side. She was beautiful, confident, laughing at something he'd said, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Luca didn't pull away. Claire's chest tightened so painfully she had to step back, gripping the hallway wall. That was the moment she finally understood that nothing would change. Later that night, after the guests left and the house settled back into silence, Claire sat alone in her small room at the back of the property. She stared at the wall for a long time. Then she opened her notebook. She didn't write about love. She didn't write about pain. She wrote professionally, cleanly, carefully. "Mr. DeSantis, thank you for the opportunity. I am submitting my resignation, effective immediately. I wish you well." 3 sentences, no explanation, no emotion. She folded the paper neatly and placed it on his desk. Then she packed her bag. When she walked out of the house that night, she didn't look back. Because she knew if she did, she wouldn't leave. Back in the present, Claire opened her eyes. Her apartment felt quiet, safe, small. She stood, kicked off her shoes, and leaned against the counter, her heart heavy. She had left because she loved him. She had stayed away because she loved herself. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked. A message from an unknown number. I won't come near you again unless you ask me to. But I needed you to know I read the note. Claire's breath caught. She stared at the screen. He had read it. She sank onto the couch slowly, emotions crashing into her all at once. Anger, relief, sadness, longing. Another message appeared. I should have stopped you. I didn't know how. Claire closed her eyes, pressing the phone to her chest. For the first time since she'd left, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. Hope. And that terrified her. Because if Luca DeSantis had finally realized what he'd lost, then the hardest part wasn't leaving him. It was deciding whether she was brave enough to let him try again. Luca DeSantis noticed the silence first. Not the obvious kind, the absence of music or voices, but the subtle kind. The kind that crept into a room after someone essential had left and taken the rhythm with them. The house still ran smoothly. The staff still arrived on time. Security still rotated like clockwork. Everything worked. And yet something felt off. It took him 2 days to realize what it was. His coffee was too hot, not burned, just wrong. He frowned at the mug in his hand, standing alone in the kitchen early one morning. The cup was clean, the coffee strong, everything exactly as he liked it. Except it wasn't. Claire always waited a moment before handing it to him. Just long enough. Just enough to let it cool without losing strength. Luca stared at the surface of the coffee as if it might explain itself. It didn't. He drank it anyway. The resignation note stayed on his desk longer than it should have. 3 sentences, neat handwriting, no emotion, professional, controlled. Claire's handwriting had always been like that. Clear, precise, no unnecessary flourishes. It suited her. At first, Luca told himself it was simple. People left all the time. She had worked hard. She probably wanted something different. A quieter life. A normal one. He respected that. He told himself that more than once. But respect didn't explain why he kept rereading the note. Or why he noticed things that had nothing to do with her. Until he realized they had everything to do with her. The house felt louder at night. Messier. Less contained. He found himself glancing toward the hallway in the mornings, expecting to see her there, sleeves rolled, hair tied back, already halfway through a task. She didn't appear, and the space she used to occupy didn't fill itself. Luca had never thought of Claire as invisible. That was the lie he told himself later, when the guilt began to settle. At the time, she had simply been there, reliable, calm, efficient. She didn't demand attention, didn't interrupt, didn't hover. She moved through his world like she belonged there without ever asking for more. And Luca, accustomed to people who took and took loudly, hadn't known how to read someone who asked for nothing. He noticed her absence most in the smallest ways. The way rooms stayed tidy, but felt unfinished. The way schedules ran on time, but felt heavier. The way laughter echoed longer than it should have after parties ended. Women still came and went. That didn't change. But Luca found himself cutting evenings short, leaving rooms earlier, sending guests away with polite disinterest. He told himself it was work. It wasn't. One night, weeks after Claire left, Luca stood alone in the living room after everyone else had gone. The lights were low, the house finally quiet. He picked up a glass from the table, one of many left behind, and frowned. There was a faint smear on the rim. Lipstick. Claire would have noticed. She would have wiped it away before it ever reached the sink. Luca set the glass down harder than necessary. He didn't understand when it had started bothering him, this awareness, this constant sense that something essential had slipped past him without him noticing. He didn't like not understanding things, especially himself. He didn't go looking for her right away. That would have meant admitting something he wasn't ready to name. Instead, he asked questions that didn't sound like questions. "She quit?" he asked one of the senior staff one afternoon, tone neutral. "Yes," came the careful reply. "She left a note." "I know." A pause. "She was very professional," the staff member added, unsure if that was helpful. Luca nodded. "She always was." That night he opened the desk drawer where he'd placed her note. Read it again. 3 sentences. No anger. No accusations. No explanation. The restraint in it unsettled him more than any confrontation would have. Because restraint meant control, and control meant she had thought this through. It wasn't until he saw her again, truly saw her, that the truth became impossible to ignore. She wasn't in his house. She wasn't part of his routine. She was somewhere else, living. Luca noticed her by accident. He had been leaving a meeting downtown when his driver slowed slightly at an intersection. "There," the driver said quietly. "Isn't that—" Luca looked. Claire stood on the sidewalk, phone pressed to her ear, laughing. Actually laughing. Not the polite smile she used at work. Not the reserved calm he remembered. A real laugh. His chest tightened. She wore a simple coat, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked lighter, freer. And that was when it hit him. She hadn't just left the job. She had left him. Luca didn't tell the driver to stop. He didn't wave, didn't call her name. He watched as she finished her call and walked away, blending into the city like she had never belonged to his world at all. That night, Luca couldn't sleep. The decision to watch her wasn't impulsive. It wasn't about control or ownership. It was about understanding. Luca instructed his security team carefully. "No interference," he said. "No contact." One of them raised an eyebrow. "Just observation?" "Yes," Luca replied. "From a distance." He told himself it was for her safety. And that wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. The truth was simpler and far more dangerous. He missed her. Claire's life, he learned, was quieter now. She worked at a small interior design firm, lived in a modest apartment, went out with friends on weekends, walked alone sometimes at night, phone in hand, shoulders relaxed. She smiled more. That hurt more than it should have. Luca watched her from afar without approaching, without speaking, without letting her feel followed. He noticed the man who picked her up one evening, the way Claire hesitated before getting into the car, the way she sat, angled toward the window. Luca felt something sharp then, not rage, jealousy, and that unsettled him deeply. He had never wanted anyone this way. He had never allowed himself to, because wanting meant vulnerability, and vulnerability had a cost. The night of the restaurant wasn't planned. Luca had known she would be there. He had seen her message to a friend earlier that day, boring date tonight, and ignored the tightening in his chest. He told himself he wouldn't interfere. He told himself it wasn't his place. He walked into the restaurant intending only to look, but then he saw her across the room, saw the way she forced polite smiles, the way her shoulders tensed, the way she nodded when she wasn't listening. He recognized it instantly. That wasn't happiness. That was endurance. And something inside him snapped, not violently, not dramatically, but decisively. He pulled up the chair. He said the words. And the moment they left his mouth, he knew there was no going back. Standing outside later, watching her walk toward her car, Luca felt the weight of everything he had ignored finally settle. When she told him she had loved him alone, something inside him broke open. Because he realized the truth too late. Claire had never wanted his power. She had wanted his attention, his presence, his choice. And he had been too busy not choosing anyone to see that refusing to choose was still a choice. As he watched her drive away, Luca DeSantis stood still, the city moving around him. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel powerful. He felt afraid, afraid that even if he wanted her now, even if he was ready to choose her, he might have waited too long. And that realization followed him home, settling into the quiet spaces of a house that no longer felt like his own. Claire didn't sleep much that night. She lay on her side, staring at the dim outline of her bedroom ceiling, replaying Luca's voice in her head. Not the commanding tone he used in meetings, not the calm authority he carried everywhere. The quieter one, the one that had said, "I was wrong." She rolled onto her back and sighed. "Of course," she muttered to the empty room. "Now you figure that out." Her phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark, silent. She told herself she wouldn't check it. She checked it anyway. No new messages. Claire turned the phone face down and closed her eyes, trying to ignore the strange mix of relief and disappointment twisting in her chest. The next day passed slowly, too slowly. She went to work, answered emails, reviewed fabric samples, laughed at the right moments. Her coworkers didn't notice anything different. They never did. But every time her phone buzzed, her pulse jumped. By early evening, she was restless. She changed clothes twice, then changed back into something simple. Dark jeans, a soft sweater, nothing that tried too hard. She wasn't going anywhere. At least that's what she told herself. Her phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up. "If you're willing," the message read, "I'd like to talk. Somewhere public. Somewhere neutral. No pressure." Claire stared at the screen. No pressure. She almost laughed. After everything, Luca DeSantis was asking instead of taking. She typed, erased, typed again. 1 hour, she finally wrote. "That's it." The response came almost immediately. "Thank you." That alone unsettled her. The restaurant Luca chose was quiet, understated. No velvet ropes, no crowd watching. Just warm lighting and soft music that didn't demand attention. Claire arrived first. She sat near the window, hands folded loosely in her lap, telling herself she was calm. She wasn't. When Luca walked in, the room didn't freeze this time. But Claire noticed anyway. He spotted her instantly. Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, caution, history. Luca approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance from the table. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You're welcome," Claire replied evenly. "Sit." He did. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was strange sitting across from him like this. No uniforms, no hierarchy, no unspoken rules about where she belonged in the room. Just two people. "So," Claire said, breaking the silence, "you wanted to talk?" "Yes." "And you promised no pressure?" "I did." She raised an eyebrow. "Good, because I'm very good at walking away." A corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close. "I've noticed." She huffed quietly despite herself, then frowned. That wasn't a compliment. "I know." There it was again, that quiet understanding. They ordered drinks. Claire chose wine. Luca followed her lead. "That's new," she remarked. "What?" he asked. "You letting someone else decide?" He met her gaze. "I'm learning." Claire studied him for a moment. He looked the same, controlled, powerful. But something in his posture was different. Less guarded, less distant. "Why now?" she asked softly. "And don't give me a polished answer." Luca leaned back slightly, considering. "Because I realized I confused silence with stability." She blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said carefully, "I thought if I didn't create problems, I wasn't causing harm. I didn't see that absence can be just as loud." Claire's fingers tightened around her glass. "That took you long enough," she murmured. "I know," Luca said without defensiveness, "and I don't expect that realization to fix anything." She nodded slowly. "Good." Their drinks arrived. Claire took a sip, then said, "You embarrassed me." "I know," he said again. "I shouldn't have done that." She tilted her head. But I don't regret stopping it," he admitted. "Only how?" She sighed. "You always do things backwards." His lips curved slightly. "I'm consistent, at least." That earned a reluctant smile from her. For the first time that evening, the tension eased just a fraction. "You followed me," Claire said, eyes steady. Before the restaurant? Yes. How long? Luca didn't hesitate. Long enough to know you weren't being followed by anyone who shouldn't be. Her brows knit. That's not what I asked. I know, he replied gently. Long enough to miss you. The honesty disarmed her. Claire looked down at the table, then back up. I didn't leave to punish you. I know. I left because staying hurt. I know. She swallowed. And I won't stay again if it's the same. It won't be, Luca said. That's a promise, she warned. It's a commitment, he corrected. There's a difference. She studied him. Explain. A promise is words, he said. A commitment is behavior. Claire's chest tightened. Then show me. Luca nodded. That's why I asked for this hour, not to convince you, to start proving it. They talked. About small things first. Her new job, his schedule, the weather, the city. Then bigger things. Why she loved organizing spaces. Why he preferred order over chaos. Why silence felt safe to him. Why being unseen had felt unbearable to her. At one point, Claire laughed. Really laughed. When Luca admitted he once tried to clean the kitchen himself and gave up after 10 minutes. It's harder than it looks, he defended mildly. I told you that, she said. You told me many things, he replied. I didn't listen enough. Her smile faded softly. As the hour drew closer to its end, the air between them felt warmer. Closer. Charged with something neither of them named. Luca checked his watch and set it face down on the table. Our hour's almost up, he said. Claire nodded. I noticed. I won't ask you to stay longer, he added. She looked at him sharply. You won't. No, he said, because I said no pressure. That restraint did something dangerous to her resolve. She leaned back, crossing her arms. And if I wanted to? Luca's gaze darkened. Not possessive, not hungry, curious, careful. Then I'd be grateful, he said. But I'd let you decide. Silence stretched again, but this time it felt different. Claire exhaled slowly. Walk me to my car, she said. Luca stood immediately. Of course. Outside the air was cool, calm. The city hummed around them. They walked side by side, close enough that she could feel his warmth, far enough that she didn't feel trapped. At her car, Claire stopped. She turned to face him fully. This doesn't mean I trust you, she said. I know, Luca replied. It means I'm willing to see if I can. That's enough, he said quietly. For now. She hesitated, then asked the question she'd been holding back all evening. Why did you really read the note so many times? Luca's gaze didn't waver. Because I was looking for something you didn't write. Her breath caught. What? The part where you tell me you're done forever, he said. You never did. Claire's chest tightened painfully. I didn't know if I could mean it, she admitted. Luca stepped closer, just a fraction, and stopped. Neither did I, he said. Their eyes locked. The moment stretched. Then Claire opened her car door. She paused, looking back at him one last time. This is your only chance to do this, right? She said softly. Luca nodded. I intend to. She got in and closed the door. As she drove away, Claire realized something unexpected. For the first time since she'd left, she wasn't replaying the pain. She was imagining the possibility, and that scared her almost as much as it excited her. Because next time, the walls between them might not be there at all. Claire didn't answer his messages right away, not because she wanted to punish him, not because she wanted him to chase her, but because for the first time in a long while, she wanted to feel what she was feeling without reacting to it. She went to work. She cooked dinner. She folded laundry while a show played in the background without her really watching it. And still, Luca was there. Not in her thoughts like a storm. More like a steady presence she kept circling back to. When she finally picked up her phone that evening, there was only one message from him. I hope your day was kind to you. That was it. No question. No demand. Claire stared at the screen longer than she wanted to admit. She typed back. It was. Thank you. The reply came a few minutes later. May I take you to dinner tomorrow? Same rules as before. Claire smiled despite herself. One condition, she wrote. No expensive restaurants. There was a pause. Then, deal. I'll pick you up at 7, if that's okay. She hesitated only a second. It's okay. Luca arrived exactly on time. Claire noticed that immediately. She also noticed that he wasn't dressed the way he usually was. No dark-tailored coat. No sharp lines meant to intimidate. He wore simple jeans, a black sweater, and a jacket that looked normal, human. When she opened the door, he didn't step inside. Hi, he said. Hi, she replied. He glanced at her outfit, soft dress, minimal makeup, hair loose around her shoulders, and then quickly looked away, like he didn't want to make her uncomfortable. That restraint made her chest tighten. You ready? He asked. Yes. They walked to his car together. This time he opened the door for her, not dramatically, not possessively, just quietly. Claire slid into the seat, noticing how careful he was with space, with timing, with everything. You're being strange, she said as he got in. Luca glanced at her. In a bad way? In a noticeable way. He exhaled softly. I'm trying not to ruin this. That honesty startled a laugh out of her. Well, she said, buckling her seatbelt. Pressure always helps. A corner of his mouth lifted. Good to know. The restaurant was small and warm, tucked between two quiet streets, the kind of place people didn't stumble into by accident. Claire liked it immediately. They ordered casually, shared a plate, talked. Not about the past. About the present. She told him about a client who insisted on rearranging furniture every 10 minutes. He told her about a meeting that went completely off the rails because someone forgot to mute themselves. You? She asked incredulously. In a meeting like that? Yes, he said dryly. Power does not protect you from technology. She laughed again, full and easy this time. Luca watched her like the sound mattered. When the food arrived, they fell into a comfortable rhythm. Passing plates. Sharing comments. Sitting closer than before without acknowledging it. At one point, Claire reached for her glass at the same time he did. Their fingers brushed. The contact was brief. Electric. Both of them stilled. Claire's breath caught. Luca didn't pull away immediately, but he didn't move closer either. You okay? He asked quietly. She nodded. Yes. He waited, then slowly withdrew his hand. That control was intoxicating. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. I wanted to, he replied. You deserve choice. The words settled between them, heavy and warm. After dinner they walked. No destination, just movement. The city felt calmer tonight. Streetlights casting soft glows. Cars passing in the distance. Claire realized she wasn't tense. She wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. She was just with him. Can I ask you something? Luca said. She glanced at him. Depends. He smiled faintly. Fair. Go ahead. Did you ever think I noticed? He asked. Back then. She hesitated. Sometimes. And then something would happen that made me think I was imagining it. Luca nodded slowly. I noticed. Her heart stuttered. Then why? Because noticing didn't feel safe, he said. Acknowledging it would have meant wanting something I didn't know how to protect. She stopped walking. He stopped too, turning to face her. That doesn't excuse it, he added quickly. I just don't want to lie anymore. Claire studied him in the streetlight. You're not very good at this, she said gently. At honesty? He asked. At vulnerability. His lips curved slightly. I'm learning. She exhaled, her shoulders relaxing. They resumed walking. At one point, she stumbled slightly on the uneven sidewalk. Luca's hand came out instinctively, hovering near her waist, ready to catch her but not touching unless necessary. She steadied herself. "I'm fine," she said. "I know," he replied, dropping his hand. "Habit," she smiled. That habit, she didn't mind it. When they reached her apartment, neither of them spoke right away. The air felt charged, close. Claire turned to him, her pulse quickening. "This is where you say goodnight," she said lightly. "Yes," Luca replied. He hesitated. Then, "May I hug you?" The question surprised her. She nodded. "Yes?" He stepped forward slowly, wrapping his arms around her with deliberate care. His embrace was warm, steady, protective without pressure. Claire's hands slid around his back without thinking. She rested her cheek against his chest. For a moment, everything else faded. This was what she had wanted back then. Not declarations, not promises. Just this. After a few seconds, Luca loosened his hold but didn't fully let go. Claire tilted her head up. Their faces were close, too close to ignore. Luca's eyes searched hers, asking without words. She swallowed, heart racing. "Not yet," she whispered. He nodded immediately. "Okay." No disappointment, no tension, just respect. She smiled softly. "Thank you." "For what?" "For making this feel safe." His voice dropped. "You are." That did it. Claire leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek, soft, brief, deliberate. Then she stepped back. "Good night, Luca." "Good night, Claire." She went inside without looking back this time, but she knew he was still standing there, and for the first time that didn't feel like something from her past. It felt like the beginning of something real. Inside her apartment, Claire leaned against the door, heart racing, a smile tugging at her lips. She pulled out her phone and saw a message from him already waiting. "Thank you for trusting me tonight," she typed back. "Don't make me regret it." The reply came instantly. "I won't." Claire closed her eyes. She wanted to believe him. And that was the most dangerous and hopeful part of all. Because next time she wouldn't just be opening the door. She'd be opening her heart. Claire didn't expect peace to feel so unsettling. She woke up slowly, sunlight creeping through the thin gap between the curtains, painting the wall in soft gold. For a few seconds, she lay still, waiting for the familiar weight in her chest, the tension, the ache, the constant need to brace herself for disappointment. It didn't come. Her body felt rested, heavy in a good way, calm. That realization scared her more than any argument ever had. Because calm meant safety, and safety meant she was beginning to trust Luca DeSantis again. She rolled onto her side and stared at her phone on the nightstand. No messages, no missed calls, nothing that felt intrusive. That too was new. Luca wasn't hovering, wasn't demanding reassurance, wasn't testing her boundaries. He was waiting. And somehow, that made everything louder. Claire spent the morning trying to distract herself. She showered, she dressed, she made coffee she barely tasted. She answered emails and reorganized a shelf that didn't need reorganizing. But her thoughts kept drifting back to the night before. The way Luca had asked before touching her. The way he'd stepped back without complaint. The way he'd looked relieved, not frustrated, when she said not yet. That mattered. Her phone buzzed around noon. She hesitated before picking it up, bracing herself without knowing why. "Would you like to have dinner tonight? At my place. No staff, no guests, just us." Claire exhaled slowly. She knew what his house represented. Power, history, a space where she had once learned to love him quietly while pretending she didn't. She typed back carefully. "Your place is a loaded suggestion." The reply came a moment later. "I know. That's why I'm asking, not assuming." Her fingers hovered over the screen. "I'll come," she finally wrote. "But I leave when I want." The answer was immediate, always. That single word did something dangerous to her resolve. When Claire arrived that evening, the driveway was empty. No security cars, no quiet movement behind tinted windows, no sense of being observed. Just a single light on inside the house. Luca opened the door himself. He wasn't wearing a suit. That alone startled her. He stood there in dark jeans and a simple shirt, sleeves rolled up, no watch, no sharp edges to hide behind. He looked like a man waiting for someone he wanted to impress, not intimidate. "Hi," he said. His voice was softer than usual. "Hi," she replied. For a brief moment, neither of them moved. Then he stepped aside. "Come in." Claire crossed the threshold slowly, half expecting the familiar tension to rush back. It didn't. The house felt different, still elegant, still controlled, but quieter, warmer. She noticed the scent first. Food, citrus, something clean and real, not cologne, not perfume. "You cooked," she said, incredulous. Luca nodded. "I had help." She smiled. "That sounds more believable." He let out a low laugh. "I didn't want to risk poisoning you on our first night alone." "Very thoughtful," she teased, hanging her coat. They moved through the house together, side by side. No one leading, no one following. Claire noticed things she'd never seen before. Photographs. Not many, but enough. A younger Luca with an older man she assumed was family. A woman with kind eyes. A moment frozen in time before responsibility had hardened him. "You never had these out," she said quietly. "I didn't think they mattered," he replied. "I was wrong." That word again. Wrong. She wondered how many times he'd practiced saying it before it came so easily. Dinner was simple and intimate. They didn't sit at the formal table. They sat at the kitchen island, close enough that their knees brushed when they shifted. The food was good, better than she expected. "Don't look so surprised," Luca said dryly. "I'm reassessing everything I thought I knew," she replied. That earned a small smile. They talked easily, about her work, his day, things that didn't carry weight. Laughter came more naturally now. So did silence. Comfortable silence. At one point, Claire reached for her glass at the same time he did. Their fingers touched. Neither of them pulled away immediately. Claire's breath caught. Luca watched her face carefully, searching for hesitation. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Yes," she said. Only then did he withdraw his hand, slowly, deliberately. That restraint felt more intimate than any rush of desire ever could. "You didn't have to stop," she murmured. "I wanted to," he replied. "Choice matters." Her chest tightened. It mattered that he understood that now. After dinner, they moved to the living room. The lights were low, the couch inviting. Claire curled her legs beneath her without thinking, choosing comfort instead of distance. Luca sat across from her at first, posture relaxed but attentive. There was something he needed to say. She could feel it. "I should tell you something," he said eventually. She nodded. "Okay. I don't want you to think I changed overnight," he continued. "I didn't." "I know," she said gently. "But I did realize something," he said. "And once I saw it, I couldn't ignore it anymore." She waited. "When you left," Luca said slowly, "the house didn't just feel empty. My life did." Claire frowned slightly. "That's not... You were the only person who ever looked at me like I was just a man," he said. "Not power, not threat, not advantage." Her breath caught. "You saw me when I wasn't performing," he continued, "and I didn't understand how rare that was." Emotion pressed against her ribs, sharp and sudden. "I didn't want to see you that way," she admitted. "It hurt too much." "I know," he said quietly. She looked down at her hands. "You let me fall in love with you alone." Luca didn't deny it. "I didn't know," he said, "and by the time I understood, I didn't know how to fix it." "That doesn't make it hurt less," she whispered. "I know," he replied. That acknowledgement mattered. He shifted closer, not touching, just closing the distance enough that she felt his presence more clearly. "Why didn't you want anything serious with anyone?" she asked, finally voicing the question she'd carried for years. Luca leaned back slightly, eyes fixed on a point in the distance. "Because serious means loss," he said. "Eventually." She shook her head. "That's not fair." "It was real for me," he replied. He spoke carefully, choosing each word with intention. I grew up watching love become leverage. He continued. People I cared about disappeared. Some left. Some were taken. I learned that attachment creates weakness. Claire's heart ached. So you avoided it? She said. Yes. And women? She asked gently. They were safe. He admitted. Temporary. No expectations beyond the moment. She swallowed. And I wasn't. No, Luca said. You weren't. Silence stretched between them. Claire exhaled slowly. I didn't want to be another option. You never were, he said immediately. I just didn't know how to choose without losing control. She looked at him fully now. You don't get to protect me from your fear, she said. You protect me by trusting me with it. His gaze locked onto hers. That's what I'm trying to do now, he said. If you'll let me. She reached out slowly, placing her hand on his forearm. He froze, letting her set the pace. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, he replied. That surprised her. You? She asked softly. Yes, he said. Because this matters. She smiled faintly. You're not very comforting. I'm honest, he replied. She laughed quietly, emotion thick in her voice. They stayed like that for a long moment, connected, breathing in sync, letting the closeness speak. Eventually, Luca moved closer, slowly, giving her time to stop him. She didn't. His hand settled at her waist, warm, steady, careful. Claire leaned into him instinctively, resting her forehead against his chest. This is dangerous, she murmured. It should be. Luca said softly. It's real. She closed her eyes, letting herself feel it. When she lifted her head, she cupped his face gently. The kiss was slow, intentional, unhurried. No urgency, no possession. Just choice. When they parted, Luca rested his forehead against hers. If you tell me to stop, he said quietly, I will. Not tonight, she whispered. But not further either. He nodded immediately. I can wait. That's new, she teased softly. He smiled, truly smiled. I'm learning. They returned to the couch, fingers intertwined now, the last barrier gone. Claire rested her head on his shoulder, listening to his heartbeat. I don't regret leaving, she said quietly. I wouldn't want you to, Luca replied. It taught me something. What? She asked. That losing you once nearly broke me, he said. Losing you again would destroy me. Her chest tightened. She closed her eyes, warmth spreading through her. Outside, the city continued its restless movement. Inside, something steady was forming. Not a promise, not a fantasy, a choice. And for the first time, neither of them felt like they were guessing their way forward. They were building something. Together. Claire woke up slowly, the way someone wakes when they feel safe. For a moment she didn't open her eyes. She stayed still, listening, sensing. The room was quiet, filled with soft morning light. The sheets were warm. The air felt calm. Then she felt it. An arm wrapped around her waist, firm but relaxed. A steady chest behind her back. A slow, even breath against her shoulder. Luca. The realization didn't spark panic. It didn't make her tense. It made her smile. She shifted slightly, careful not to wake him, but he stirred immediately, instinct sharp even in sleep. His arm tightened just a fraction, not to restrain her, but to keep her close. Morning, he murmured, voice low and rough. Morning, she replied softly. She turned in his arms, facing him now. His eyes were already open, focused on her like she was the only thing that mattered in the room. You okay? He asked quietly. Yes, she said, and then, after a beat, I really am. That answer seemed to settle something inside him. They stayed there for a while, not rushing. No alarms, no schedules, no obligations pressing in. For the first time in a long time, neither of them had anywhere else they needed to be. Later in the kitchen, Claire watched Luca move around the space with surprising ease. He wasn't efficient the way staff had been. He wasn't precise the way he was in business. He was relaxed. He handed her a mug of coffee and paused, watching her take the first sip. "Well?" he asked. She smiled. "Perfect temperature." His lips curved, satisfied. "I remembered." She laughed softly. "Of course you did." They stood there, leaning against the counter, talking about nothing and everything. About her work, about a trip she wanted to take someday, about a place he'd always meant to visit but never had. "You could go now," she said lightly. "You know, without chaos." He looked at her. "I already am." That made her heart squeeze. That afternoon, Luca asked her to come with him somewhere. Not a meeting, not an obligation, not a compromise. Just somewhere. They drove without much conversation, the comfortable kind of silence filling the car. Claire noticed he wasn't tense. His hands rested easily on the wheel. His posture was open. When they stopped, she recognized the place immediately. The restaurant. Her breath caught. "Luca." "I know," he said calmly. "We don't have to go in." She studied the entrance, the memory of that first night flashing through her mind, the chair, the words, the shock. Then she exhaled slowly. "No," she said. "Let's go." Inside, no one froze this time. No silence, no tension, no fear. They were just another couple walking in together. They were seated near the window, the same general area as before. Claire laughed softly as she sat down. "You realize this place will always remember you." Luca shrugged. "Good." They ordered, talked, smiled. At one point, a server glanced at them, recognition flickering briefly in her eyes before she smiled politely and walked away. Claire leaned closer to Luca. "You're famous." He tilted his head. "Infamous, technically." She laughed, resting her elbow on the table. "I prefer reformed." His gaze softened. "Me too." Halfway through dinner, Luca reached across the table and took her hand openly. No hesitation, no checking the room, no pulling back. Just choice. Claire squeezed his fingers. "You're not hiding," she murmured. "I don't want to," he replied simply. She believed him. After dessert, Claire noticed something that made her pause. The chair. The same one. She smiled to herself, stood up, and pulled it closer to him deliberately before sitting back down. Luca watched her with a look she had never seen before, something like awe. "This feels different," she said quietly. "It is," he replied. "That night I acted out of fear. This time I'm acting out of certainty." She leaned in and kissed him gently, right there in the restaurant. No drama, no spectacle, just real. The changes in Luca's world didn't come with announcements. They came with consistency. He stopped bringing people around just to fill space. He left events early. He said no more often than yes. When asked why, his answer was simple. "I have someone waiting for me." Claire heard about it later and shook her head, amused. "You're impossible," she told him. "I'm committed," he corrected. She liked that better. Weeks turned into months. Their relationship grew in quiet ways. Shared mornings, late-night conversations, comfortable routines that felt earned, not assumed. Claire moved in slowly, piece by piece. A drawer, a shelf, a corner that became hers. Luca never rushed her. One night, as they cooked together, Luca stood behind her, arms loosely around her waist. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think choosing meant losing control." She turned in his arms. "And now? Now I know choosing is the only way to keep what matters." She kissed him then, long and certain. A year later, the restaurant looked exactly the same. Same lighting, same atmosphere. But everything else was different. Claire sat across from Luca, their fingers intertwined on the table. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "All the time," he admitted. She smiled. "You were dramatic. I panicked. You said, 'She's mine.'" He nodded slowly. "I was wrong." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "You were never mine," he said. "You chose me." Her smile softened. "Every day." This time she pulled the chair closer. The world didn't stop. It simply adjusted. She had once walked away to save herself. Now she stayed, not because she was claimed, but because she was chosen, every single day.